did what he wanted to do. He had his foot walker with his pipes lined up, and he got yelled at for that. And he had his sweaty clothes on, and and he'd just stare at him. And his energy just kind of came up, and he said the most precise words about the brain that you've ever heard. And she said, "Where did you learn that?" Of course, we knew. The love of the community starts welling up in me, and starts hitting me, and then this is what happens, so I have to stop. Because he's always kept his body healthy long before I knew it.
Thank you all for coming. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome you here and to speak for EJ on this plane, in this humanity that we live in. And yes, he may or may not be here. I don't look for that. We knew the journey. But if you turn around and look to the open door in the shop, there's a cape laying on that chair. And EJ, from the first time that we learned Sky Focus, way back when, always did Sky Focus. In a chair or in wherever we lived, it was in some sort of weather-protected situation, but he was always out there. And he would be there for hours. If he had a wake-up call at 2, he would be out there. He was out there until his leg that had swollen so much from the lymph, he couldn't walk or get out there. But he would sit, we had him in here on a chair, and he had to sit up, but he always insisted that it's facing out to the trees. So that's the kind of guy he was. He did that before he was in school. When he was younger, he always worked at keeping himself healthy. He didn't know what sickness was. He didn't know. So when he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer in 2014, after we moved here, he didn't know what that was. He just kept on. They cut it out, and he kept on and, cutting wood. And they said he wasn't supposed to lift very much, but that didn't slow him down. So that's kind of a start of a little introduction of who he was. He never missed a time. It didn't matter the weather. He was always out there for hours. Any time of the early morning, middle of the night, whatever time he was out there. And then he would sit and he would be out there when the sun was up watching nature. Bobcats coming through, all of the animals that you don't see during the day. So he would give a report, and it was just a great continued journey that he stayed on. And now what I would like to do to start with, because I've had such tremendous support from my family, and EJ's family is not here, we're going to get together and take his ashes to the mountains of Idaho, where we lived for so many years, and that will incorporate his family. You'll see pictures of his family inside, and you're all welcome to walk around it, go anywhere, go in and see the slideshow and the albums and the things that are there, and you're welcome to just make yourself at home. Now, to start with, I'd like to introduce our our youngest, Nels Moulton, who was here. He's young, you can tell, mid 50s, and he was here to help me the whole time with EJ. He would come down. He has to travel by bus, and so he would come down as needed, or Kathy would bring him down as needed, and Trevor would come with him as needed. But he was here the last moment that EJ was on this planet as a human, and it was absolutely wonderful to have him here. And our other son, who's 2 years older than Nels, mid 50s, upper mid 50s, is in Europe and in France right now and was doing FaceTime and everything, but the internet went down. So Luby, bless his heart, is recording this, and he'll be able to see it as well. So, and then my daughter-in-law, Kathy Faulkner, she's been a big help, and she's had family members that she's had to take care of, and she does an amazing amount of work for everyone in the family, and then some. So I'm very pleased to introduce her. And then we have Kate Skipper, the wife of Jason Skipper, my nephew, and their daughter Josie. And my sister is, there she is, my youngest sister, Annie Skipper. And the whole family came to be here today, and I thank you for coming. I've always had support with the family. And then Trevor, my grandson, we kind of hang out together. We can do some few video hours if we need to. And so we have a good time. He teaches me about the internet and all that kind of stuff. So we have our thing. But I'm very thankful that they've been here and been in my life. And EJ's family, they're mostly in Seattle, and that's where he grew up. And he had cousins, and Michal will tell a little more of that story. But his cousin, one of them won the Nobel Prize for where smell is located in the brain. And that's a whole story of when we learned the brain. Some of you have been back all that far in school where we learned about the brain, and we studied for days and days and days. Well, in a little conversation with his cousin Linda, who had just won the Nobel Prize, and he was doing some construction work there, and he said, "Well, congratulations, you won the prize." Yeah, this, and he said, it was about the brain, wasn't it, or something? And he doesn't talk much. You wouldn't know that he already. She said yes, and she said they started kind of having a little dialogue, and because we had learned so much in school about the brain, we'd studied it, and kind of I could see this energy. He didn't stand up tall. He was 6'3", but he didn't stretch himself. But his energy just moved up, and I stepped back, and I could see. I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. They had the most amazing conversation, and him explaining the brain. And she said, "Where did you learn that?" She said, we have to talk some more. And she had just won the Nobel Prize, for crying out loud. So it's that's kind of who EJ was. He didn't strut his stuff, and he didn't talk a lot. But boy, when that energy moved, it was like that intellect was just spot on. So I'd like to welcome all of you, and I'd like to thank the family for coming, and his family. We're going to go take the ashes next year to Idaho. He loved the mountains, and as you'll see in the pictures, we panned for gold, and we cut wood, and we did all those things for years. So I'd like to welcome you and say thank you all for coming. It's wonderful. So I'll turn it over to our Michal, who has been here for all of us. At everything that we do, he's always there to back us up, to help us out, and tell a few jokes. Oh, that reminds me. There was a great one. Oh, listen to this. This is about doubt. Here EJ had, he's been doing all the work and doing the Blue Body and doing everything that we'd learned, plus all of the years that he was doing things. And one day I was talking to Mihal, and this was after he had the cancer thing happen, and he was still out there in his chair focusing and healing. And I said, Mihal, what happened? He's always healed himself, and he can get in his body and he can look and see what's going on. Mihal said, he's still alive. He's still alive. And do you know that completely wiped my doubt away. Since then, that was a catalyst for me to not doubt any of that. And that's how it's unfolded now since then. So Mihal can tell a joke, but they're pretty good. So I'd like to welcome him and thank him for coming. And I would like to toast EJ, and I would like to toast all of our friends that have passed this plane for now. So we'll do those, and I would like Mihal to take it from here.
Carol, that was wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Carol and dear friends, especially family, it's wonderful to have you all here. An old friend of mine was from California, was coming to Ireland once, never been there before. He said, what's a good time of year weather-wise to come to Ireland? I said, there's no such thing. And he said, how do you mean? And I said, well, the Irish climate has been described as 9 months winter and 3 months bad weather. But I thought that Ireland was the wettest country in the world till I moved to the Pacific Northwest. So this is normal. This is normal. Anyway, it's good to be here. A sad occasion, but we have a lot to rejoice about when we think of our dear friend EJ, who is such an exceptional man in every way. You know, it's almost 20 centuries. In another 4 years, it'll be 20 centuries since Jesus of Nazareth began his mission, so rightly called the Christ. He came to bring us a message of empowerment and liberation. Because our species had been drastically altered at its very beginnings by interventions. And the message of Jesus, which was a long time after that had occurred, was aimed at rectifying, undoing all the crippling effects on our nature, which had resulted from that manipulation long ago. Now, unfortunately, as you well know, a good deal of the meaning and power of his message was quickly lost soon after his mission ended. So instead of being the empowering message of liberation for all of humanity, which Jesus gave, it was warped into some kind of curious drama in which Jesus allegedly came down here to suffer and die for our sins, to appease the vengeance of a savage God. Basically, of course, as you know, that's an atheistic position. Because what kind of God could be behind such a scheme? Now, Ramtha was the person behind the mission of Jesus 2,000 years ago. Jesus was the front man for Ramtha in that mission. But you and I have been fortunate enough to have that same message delivered to us now in an even more powerful form in our own lifetime. And over an unbroken period of 58 years, EJ and Carol together nourished a passionate concern for truth and for personal evolution of a profoundly spiritual kind. They were both searching together as partners in the best possible sense for the many profound questions that this life gives to us all. And they found the message that gave those answers and that gave those techniques to restore the power of our race, the teachings of Ramtha and his ancient school of wisdom. And following the advice of Jesus, literally, they gave up everything and started life anew here in the Pacific Northwest, as so many of us have done. We were saying just before we began that you come to realize at a certain stage in your life that if you've left the place in which you grew up and were familiar and spend a quarter century or so somewhere else, there is nowhere left to go back to. It's vanished. It's a one-way street. But EJ is now reaping the benefits of all that system of wisdom and all those hours spent up there contemplating and focusing and bringing out the deeper realms of his being. So we're gathered here today. Yes, we're gathered in grief, but we're more than that. We're more than that. We're here to celebrate the life of a really great man, a private man, not on the world stage, but a great man. And we rightly honor, of course, in the first place, everything that he did in his life. But above all, what we want to acknowledge here in our beautiful ceremony today at his home and Carol's home is to celebrate the extent to which we all benefited from knowing him and the example that he gave, that quiet friendship. EJ, Edward John, was born in Seattle and attended school locally. And after high school graduation, he attended the University of Washington in the School of Forest Science. He had a pretty distinguished career in UW, but it was cut short by one of the realities of life. But as Carol has mentioned, there was a really bright spark in the family. One of EJ's cousins, 12 years his junior, I think, Linda Buck, who is currently on the faculty of the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle. Now, she is one of those women who changed science. On the 4th of October in 2004, she was jointly awarded the Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine, along with Professor Richard Axel of Columbia. The award was for their work on the olfactory receptors in the brain, because apparently one of the great mysteries to medicine down the years was how the sense of smell worked. The basic principles, say, for recognizing and remembering about 10,000 different odors were not understood at all up to that date. Now, EJ's cousin Linda, along with Richard Axel, they solved this problem. And in a series of pioneering studies back in 1991, they explained for the first time how our sense of smell works. They explained the many enigmas that scent and smell has. For example, how can we consciously smell a lilac flower in the spring and recall the same smell and sensation in other times and places? No one could ever explain that before their work. While EJ was at UW, he was drafted into the army. And Carol tells me he went through all their tests and was recognized as a genius. At the close of World War II, as you well know, a number of key German scientists and engineers had surrendered en masse to the US Army at the end of World War II. But a lot of the key people were brought here to this country under Operation Paperclip, of which I'm sure you've all heard. 127 individual German rocket scientists and engineers began to arrive at Fort Bliss, Texas at the end of 45. And using components that had been brought from Germany from the remains of the infamous V2 or Vengeance rocket system of the Nazis, they started testing and improving those at White Sands in New Mexico. And then near Huntsville in Alabama, the Redstone Arsenal was set up in 1941, mainly to serve as a chemical weapons producing center. The base became designated as the Ordnance Rocket Center. They had 130 German staff, 120 civil service employees, and 500 military personnel, including our EJ. Carol has told me how he got to know the Werner von Braun family there at that period, etc., and was part of all this stuff. Anyway, to give you an idea of the Redstone arsenal, during the Korean War, this was before EJ went there, at Redstone they produced over 38 million rounds of chemical artillery munitions. Werner von Braun had an ambition to launch an Earth satellite earlier than anyone else had, but it was thwarted. His plan was turned down in 1954. That's the time when EJ went there. But all that changed with, of course, the launch of the two Sputniks by the Soviets on October 4th and November 3rd, 1957. So within 1 week of the launch of those Sputniks, von Braun was given permission to proceed with the United States mission. And in just over 1 month, he had put the first US satellite, Explorer 1, into orbit on the 31st of January 1958. That was fast work. The following July of the same year, NASA was established by President Eisenhower, and von Braun and his organization were transferred from the Army to the new agency. So you can see that when EJ was at Redstone Arsenal, it was an exciting time to be there and to be alive. And he retained, I'm told, his friendship with a lot of his colleagues from there for many, many years afterwards. When he came back to Seattle, he soon met a young lady who was friends with his roommates. That was the fateful moment when he met Carl Williams of Hadlock on the Olympic Peninsula, another student at the University of Washington. Now that meeting caused another explosion, much more profound and long-lasting than any of the Redstone Arsenal experiments. The moment they met, Carol told me they knew they were going to be together permanently. They were married almost 58 years ago on the 29th of December 1961 in Seattle. And of course, as we all know, true love of a certain level almost always has its roots in previous incarnations. And we know that this special relationship that was there, which anyone, even a blind man, could see existed always between EJ and Carol, we know that their relationship was rooted in the ages and that will continue. For the bonds of true love never die. They endure beyond the grave. Their marriage was an amazing record of true love in action. 58 years is a short time indeed in the perspective of recorded history, but it's an eternity in terms of human affairs. EJ and Carol have that characteristic that always distinguishes really great people. How would you call it? I think the best way to say it is a restlessness in the soul. A feeling that something that is so hard to pinpoint is wrong with so many of the conventional belief systems, secular and sacred, that we have in this world, and a search to try to find meaning in it. That sense of adventure, that sense of curiosity, that sense of seeking answers, explanations, coherence in the paradigms that so often let us down in this world, the seeking to go beyond all that was what dominated EJ's life, and I know it has dominated yours, Carl. I saw it in their quiet attendance, for example, over many years when they came to my conversations, talks. They never missed a session, month after month. They didn't speak very much, but when they did, boy, they were on target. I guess that comes from the Redstone Arsenal experience. Yeah, you improve your aim very much. Life hurts us a lot more than death ever can, but we know that death is always hardest on those left behind. 3 years before EJ was born, Mary Elizabeth Fry wrote some immortal words that I greatly love, and they were never more appropriate than today for us here. I'm told they were originally scribbled in a hurry on a brown paper shopping bag, so they must have come from the heart. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond that glints on snow. I am the sun on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awake in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry, for I am not there. I did not die. I think the most powerful, effective and meaningful way to keep the memory of any loved one is to try to be in ourselves the things you loved most and admired most in the person who has passed on. That's the greatest tribute we could ever pay to them. The dreamer has awakened, as Jay-Z's beautiful wreath says here behind me. So farewell, EJ. We will miss you until we meet again. And now I would ask if you would fill your goblets. I know you need no instruction. And we'll stand and make a toast to our beloved friend who has left us for a while. And I know he has brought all the wisdom he learned here with him, which will enormously affect his future. So let us stand and have a toast. This is a toast that EJ used many times. This is my goblet which Jay-Z gave the comrades 20 years ago this coming December. Many times on the stage during the wine ceremonies, because they're identical to the Ram's goblet, all of them were. But many times on the stage in those years, when he handed me the goblet to refill it, I gave him back my own goblet. So this is one that has been used by Ramtha many times, and I thought today would be a very good time to use it to toast EJ. Oh, my beloved God, now that I have found you, I hear whispers in the marketplace of your presence. And I have sought you high and low, near and far. Lo, I have found you within me all along. With what great love my soul cries out with joy. O my beloved God, within me, let me touch you. Let me embrace you. Let me cry in your bosom. Let me dance in your foreverness. Sanctify me. Show me righteousness. Let me live it. That which you are within me. It is my desire to be it, richly and fully, to life. Thank you, Carol. Thank you all.
I would like it if you would do a toast for all of them that have passed here as this group is coming together. So
Okay.
we can honor them.
All right. We need to do a second toast. We need to fill up again. To all of our beloved friends who have gone on before us, that we toast to their swift return, enriched with the wisdom that they have gained in this life experience here. O my beloved God, mysterious one, you who are filled with the power of heaven and earth, fill me with your manifested kingdom, that I may become a vessel to bring forth that which is unseen in heaven, to subdue that which is seen on earth. Manifest for me my daily food, that I may bring forth my guilt, my doubt, and sorrow, and then manifest the truth. O mighty Spirit, do not allow me to be tempted. Protect me from all that would assail me, and manifest through me God divine. To all our friends in the beyond, we call upon you. We send you joy and love, and a swift return to life everlasting.
Thank you to all of you again. And I did want to say just a few more words, and then I'd love to have your stories, because I know there's a few lurking out there. I can tell. we did so many things, but I would like to thank Jay-Z, who has always sent to anyone that has been in her world and has passed this plane, has sent these beautiful, beautiful wreaths. And this came today, and I want to thank her. She's always there for us, no matter what. She's always there. She is when EJ was became so. How's the word? I don't use the word ill because he never thought of himself as being ill. He didn't know what illness was. He didn't even know what aspirin was. I had to talk to him about it when he went to the hospital the first time. He didn't have a clue as to how to behave. He just was like ready to get up and go home. Said, well, after surgery, and major surgery, and they cut things out, and they didn't overdo his brain, because I talked to the doctor and I said, his cousin's a Nobel Prize winner. Please take good care of his brain. And the doctor just, I could see, they're straight faced, but he was young, and he just like, oh, what did she, and what did she win it in? I told him. I laid it out, the brain. So take good care of it. So he had none of the other drugs, none of that stuff. He didn't want any of that. So he, where was I going with this? He just walked the halls. You know how they're supposed to get out of bed, they're supposed to walk the halls. He wanted his cape. I had to go bring his cape. And then I got the lecture of how, he was still, he'd had major surgery. There was still anesthetic, and there was still stuff running through him. And he'd already told the gals how to hook up the thing they were trying to figure out how to keep things going on him. And he was laying there, and I was watching this. And he was telling him, well, you do this and this, because he could hear their conversations of figuring out, well, does this hose go there? Does that? He just laid there and told them, suggested that they do this and this and this. And by golly, it was right, because I could see what he was saying was correct. He'd just come from the surgery, for crying out loud, and he could tell them what was right. So that worked out. But just so you know, for future reference, if you have to take care of someone, when you take those IV things, that they haul around the hospital floors and they're supposed to go for a walk, make sure they have their cape on and that they pull it. He said, do you ever see a horse pushing a cart of any kind? No, they pull them because they're out of their way. And his size 14 feet, they were out of the way. Besides, he had to stop and look at I don't know what on the walls. That's, just something. But anyway, that's what he was. He was a contemplator, thinker, and when he was ill, all of these times, again, I use that word, but the second go around, 2014, and then in 2017, he was diagnosed, and he didn't know this. We didn't know that. Even in the first go around, he was no pain, no particular illness. None of the symptoms that people have showed up. And so finally, because of a blockage, I said, well, we're going to check it out. And sure enough, that's what he had. The second go around, we didn't know. There was no pain. There was no real discomfort. But he knew something was slightly off. And of course, by then, I was like, okay, we're going to go check this out now. And sure enough, that's when they diagnosed him with inoperable cancer. It had in the same area as the colon, the first surgery, but behind it, and it had encapsulated the arteries and the nerves and the lymph, and all of that was encapsulated. They couldn't cut it out. So it didn't phase him. He didn't even equate with they couldn't cut it out. He figured he could fix it. So that's what he kept doing all the time. He always knew, he always ran Blue Body through himself. He could go in there with his mind. He could see what was, he used the word tangled, so we talked about that. You know, it's an emotion. So we talked about what does this mean? And then he would look, as we know, the emotion behind that particular organ is hatred, as our teacher has told us, and cancer is anger. So we were looking at this. He was looking at this because we know we've learned a lot, and we've learned a lot for years. So he continuously applied with his mind, and he knew that he was going to be well. He was new, and he was trying to figure out, oh yeah, I got to cut down this, and I got to do this, you know, and that never stopped. He was always being well. And yet I'm seeing his body change, gradually change over time, because I'm observing this. And yet it never occurred to him. It finally came to the point where the leg was, well, first of all, what really helped him was first his mind, then the Myers cocktail kept the nutrients in his system, and that was a donation from over at Absolute Health, that he had the Myers cocktail twice a month, and that kept his body really amazingly alive. It just was nutrients he needed. And also the Blue Room, and thank you to Jay-Z, who offered him to be in Mercy Blue 3 and then 4 times a week. And he loved the Blue Room. He'd go in there feeling uncomfortable. He never used the word pain. He said, if I'm in pain, I'll tell you. I mean, he was really uncomfortable. But I tried to get him to give me a better definition. Well, do you think it might be pain? I will tell you if it's painful. So he would go in being very uncomfortable and come out, and that discomfort level had almost gone away. So those mind, nutrients, and Blue Room were essential in his journey to that point. So then it got to the point where he couldn't go. The lymph was swollen up. His leg was so swollen he couldn't move it because the lymph wasn't going anywhere. So that evolved day by day, and we pushed him around. Nels was here, Trevor was here, and his chair back over there has wheels on it. He put wheels on it years ago, and he put wheels on the one that we had in the house so we could shove him around. You know, it's like he's always thinking of everything. He's got every tool that you can imagine in there to fix anything. So gradually that happened, that he could not go out there anymore. He had to be in the house and be here, and then we had to cancel the Blue Rooms because he couldn't bend his legs or go into the car anymore. Yet he was only uncomfortable. So, and the mass had not grown. The mass had gotten softer and smaller. So finally, as the evolution of his death came closer and closer day by day, he was in a hospital bed in the house, and I was taking care of him, and Nels was here helping me, and at different times Kathy and Trevor would be here and helping. And then people, I mean, all of you people that helped. There were people that pitched in and called me, and I'd cry, but everyone in this community pulled together for me. So finally, he couldn't talk, he couldn't move, he was in the bed, and I sat next to him and snuggled up next to him, and he said, clear as could be. He put his hands up and he looked down at his body and he said, "What happened?" And I thought for a second, but we've always told each other the truth, and we always talked in terms of the journey, and that we have separate journeys and that. And I said, "Your body is dying." So he he didn't, it was hard to tell if there was any change or difference because he was so shut down at that point. But what we saw within the next day was quieter and quieter, and things were getting a little different there in that place where the mass was. By the third day, and the nurses, the hospice nurses were coming every day. They were checking on him every day, amazed that his vital signs were perfect. I mean, he was a smoker of pipes forever, long before Loram said to him one time, he's like, "And there are some people that know how to smoke a pipe," as they look at him, and you'll see the pipes in there, and that's just a small number of them. But the nurses were amazed that his lungs were good, everything, his vital signs were perfect. Until after I said that, and he started surrendering. It was very subtle, wasn't easy to see because there was hardly any movement. But Nelson and I were together, and the day before he passed, that mass got big. The day that he passed, Nelson and I had sat down at the table, as you see, and the bed was right there, and we could see him, and we just sat down for a minute, and all of a sudden we just blasted up out of those chairs, and we looked over there, and he was gone. Totally gone. Like he was supposed to be. I didn't whine, we didn't cry, we didn't do anything. We knew what the journey was. And by knowing that and having that, yes, it doesn't make it easier necessarily, but in the moment we took care of everything, and that mass had gotten huge. Soon as his mind came off of that healing of that mass, because he had the truth given to him, and he could see it, then the body did that it did. But until that point, his mind, I just wanted everybody to know, I mean, that was really, really huge, and everybody can do that. That's what was so, we know that, but until you see something as dramatic as this, it's like, wow, we're doing great work. And then I'm running through, and then I'm alone for the first time. I'm alone for the first time in all these years. And so what we knew that, we're in each other's band, so we're picking up each other's thoughts. I can tell when he's reading something, I'm reading it too, and we had to change things around, so I wasn't reading or staying up as late as he was, that kind of thing, because I'm reading everything that he's reading, but it's coming through my mind, he's sending and receiving. But I sat there after he left. It was a couple of days, but after he left, everything unfolded exactly the way it's supposed to. I mean, even Social Security, for crying out loud, they were on time. And that I'd heard from my sister who had waited, and others had waited forever, but everything unfolded and then he was gone. He was not here. He didn't hold me back because he knew that I had a future to go through. And I knew that he did. He was in his future. And then it would just unfolded beautifully. So and I sat down 2 days after, he passed on a Thursday, and on that weekend, and Nels had gone home, and Nels, bless his heart, well, I'll tell you, Nels was here, and our other son in Europe, he was on FaceTime and talking, and so I had total support the entire time. But when he passed and I sat there for the first time in my life, I'm alone. Wow, and I looked around and I thought, I was sitting there, it was like there was an energy flowing, and I was sitting there and oh my goodness, these are my thoughts. totally my thoughts. And I thought, gee, I kind of like me. I had, so anyway, that's one of the stories. And I would like to have any of you share some of, I know we've had some great times together. We've done a lot of prospecting and a lot of wood cutting. And oh, I see a couple of ladies over there that, see, she grew up over there with us prospecting, didn't you? Huh? Would you like to say something? Come and have a little chat.
I met EJ when I was about 8 or 9. And you say he didn't know how to behave in the hospital. Well, I don't think he knew how to behave in general, but we loved that about him. And I remember mining for gold, panning for gold with him, and the joy I would get when he would laugh with me or at me. That was a good day. And loved his potatoes. We would always eat potatoes. We lived together in Sun Valley, Idaho.
She had to do this first. She's not a speaker, and
No,
neither am I.
I'm out of my box right now. So
This is her mother.
yeah, it's my mom.
These two lived with us out
I
at our
think we
camp
met
many times.
when did we go there? We were trying to figure
It was like
out.
it was like 88 or 89.
1988,
Yeah. But he was a trooper, and he taught us a lot on the woods and the snow and skiing, and he didn't say much, but his
There
presence.
was always a debate going on, and there really was, Carol. It really was. If there was 3 solutions to a problem, there might have been more. And if you had one, there was always, well, I think there's another one. And interesting role model for me. I was in my late 30s.
My age.
Yeah. April's age now.
Wow.
It's 30 years ago,
Yeah.
right? And wow, gosh, I mean, I was sitting there contemplating. There's lots more, I suppose. What?
He gave us just a lot of tools on the woods and
Oh, yeah,
life, and even though he
definitely.
didn't talk a lot, his presence was big. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking that earlier today. Yeah, he had that protective coating on him, but he was loving and caring and sweet and always there. And as a single mom in my life, you could call him up when your car broke down. You could, well, yeah.
Could rely on him.
You could rely on him. And, well, doing a 360 out Warm Springs, what do you think, Nels? In the snow, yeah. What do? Oh, you go get a carpet and put some cat litter underneath, and then, you can get your car started, and then I guess you got to drive down another mile to turn around to get home. But yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah, you can do it. So he was. It was a matter of fact, and if he didn't have Carol, I don't know. I mean, they kind of were 2 peas in a pod. I mean, they're kind of opposites in a way. He was quiet, she was not, and she was opinionated. And I think I am more opinionated now because of Carol in my life than So I'm not worried about Carol. Are you worried about Carol? I'm not worried about Carol. And
You'll be fine.
yeah, but I know EJ made it. What'd he do? He made it okay and a matter of fact and no big deal, and
Completed the circle.
he did, and love him.
Yep.
I don't know what else to say.
Thank you. It was great fun to have them there too. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Nels. I wasn't going to talk because I knew I'd choke up. I wanted to tell a story about a long time ago. Of course, there's millions of stories, endless. Almost every week of my life, there were things like that would go on. I would call him with a question on, I don't know, how do I finish out this part on my radiant floor? And he would somehow not answer the question, but get it out of me. And I mean, that was when I was 50. Imagine what it was like when I was 15. And that's where the story's from. When I was 14, I think, we used to, in Sun Valley, we would go skiing after school. And we had a program through the school. And you would, all the students that did the program would get all lined up, and we'd ski down, and they would judge how well you did it and put you in your group. And it was a source of contention all the time, because you have a bad day or a bad run, and you could be in a lower group when really you should be in an upper one. So it was an issue on one year, and the next year, we're like, well, my brother and I were really, really good skiers, and we couldn't, we out-skied that top group. And so who steps up? EJ. He goes, well, I'll tell you what, I'll do a group. So he got together with the school and became the Powder Hound group. And we had the best time in that group of us. There was probably 5 or 6 of us, and all we did was ski everywhere. It was like a family ski day every day after school. And he stepped up to do that when he had a lot of work to do, a lot of other things. But I'll never forget it. It's a big part of me. It's what I want to pass on. So
That's why we moved to Sun Valley, Idaho, ski resort, way long time ago when back there, see that little gal? She was a little gal then. We were down on Westport, Grayland area. He was building a condominium with somebody. I mean, it was like, that was a whole journey. But we decided, okay, what's the next step? Sun Valley, friends were over there and called and said, you better come over and go skiing. And of course we did, because we didn't get rich, but we sure had a lot of fun. And so we went over there, and if you worked for the Valley, you skied free, of course, and your kids skied for $1 a day. So there were attorneys, tending bar, anybody came to Sun Valley to ski. Sun Valley in those days was 1,500 people in full-time residence. Now it's thousands, and it's grown up. But it was fun. I mean, we skied every day, and I'm skiing with guys. I'm the only gal skiing with guys all the time. So, you ski the trees, you ski all of these things. So anyway, that was the ski fun, and the kids grew up skiing, and they were good skiers. And all the kids over there, they skied every day just about. So anyone else?
I'm Kathy. I'm Nels's wife and the mother of the heir apparent, Trevor. When I started dating Nels, the first obstacle to overcome was to ski well enough to continue dating Nels. And once I passed that, we entered our first holiday season with family. And anybody dating a new family member and meeting family for the first time, it's a little nerve-wracking. So to be inclusive and to be fair, they drew names of who was going to buy whose gift, and I drew EJ. And EJ has got to be the most difficult human being on the planet to shop for. So I stewed, and I thought, and I reflected, and I didn't know him very well. He was very stoic. He was very quiet. He always sauntered at his own pace, and looking back now after all of these years, he always lived life on his terms, and it's the thing that I respect the most about him. But there were things that I noticed. He always had his pipe, and he always had this god-awful plastic coffee mug that looked like it'd been run over by a Mack truck but still held his coffee every morning. So I sought to remedy the coffee part, and I bought him what is now a rare item, but it was a Starbucks Fat Boy cup, and it was like a teardrop with a fat bottom, so it could set on any log at any time, anywhere. And I got him a package of his favorite tobacco. Thanks to Carol, I found out what that was. And I got to see something that I ended up treasuring because you don't see it very often. But he looked at me and he never said anything, but he had that twinkle. And I got the twinkle. And I knew when I got the twinkle, I was in. So then I'm feeling all cocky and confident. So I host the Christmas dinner up on Orcas Island at our home, and we bring my family and Nels' family and bring the families together. So again, take all the things I said about the previous situation and just apply it to that and magnify it. And I wanted to do kind of a tradition, and so we were using the china from my grandmother. And I show EJ where he's sitting, because I did little place cards, because it has to be just so. And he's looking at the plate, and he's looking at me, and I'm not getting the twinkle. And he picks up the plate, and he looks at the plate, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? And he takes the plate, the little china plate, and he walks over to where we're carving the turkey, and he grabs the platter. That's his plate. I had to find another platter for our turkey, and from that moment on, that plate was only EJ's. He went for the potatoes first, and I got the twinkle. Then, after the platter of potatoes, that tall, skinny man would go back and fill that platter again with all the other things. And whenever I got that twinkle, I thought of the coffee cup, the tobacco, and the platter.
Oh, Kathy, thank you. That was so true. He had coffee, potatoes, and his pipe. And I still have a couple of Union Pacific Railroad big platters that are in there that he used all the time. And I did plant in our garden this year 2 things. That's all I had time for. Potatoes, more potatoes, and threw in an onion or 2. So you'll see the potatoes that I harvested. They're sitting in there. I just had, they were talking about that. It's like so true. Right until the very end, that's really the only thing he would eat. Even if it was a little tiny bit, it was a potato. So, and then the coffee. Oh, this was amazing work of the mind. And I'll let someone else think about what. Well, and true, a gift to him. Pipe cleaners, primo, no problem. That is like twinkle, twinkle, twinkle. You know, or a pipe, a $2 pipe. Oh, twinkle, no problem. I mean, at one point, he has 75 pipes. You never smoke the same pipe within 24 hours, you guys. Never. You're smoking toxic stuff. Anyway, so anyway, that just, the coffee, he quit drinking so much coffee over the years. And then during this last stint, he just didn't have any coffee because of the acidity. The body gets so acid, and we kept trying to keep that sort of under control. So he did not have the coffee that he's always had, even a cup or 2. But what he discovered, this is mind as matter. He tried to say it was something else, but we know. He said he was feeling really, the swollen leg would be really uncomfortable. Mass never bothered him. It was the swollen lymph in the leg. And he said he'd feel uncomfortable. And he said, I just need a little bit of coffee to see how that works. As soon as he'd take the first drink of coffee, the discomfort was gone. And nobody, the doctors, the nurses, we all discussed it. That coffee hadn't even hardly hit his stomach, and the pain, the discomfort was gone. It's like, I said, EJ, I think it's your mind. You love coffee so much, and it's your mind. And it had to be, because there was no way that coffee, take it in your mouth, have a drink, and discomfort's gone. Mm-mm. So that was just another little aside that mind works.
The Me and Me movie was my favorite because it had all my favorite unicorns. unicorns. And when I watched that movie, it was so great. I never even watched it. And when I watched that movie, it was so cool, and I loved it a lot. And when I watched that movie, that made me like unicorns.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Very good.
The animal movies were about all the things of animals, like zebras, cheetahs. I like cheetahs and lions. And I watched the new one that had a white night fairy. They used to be black night fairies. Do you want to go have some food?
Yes. Oh, thank you. Let's have some food. That was beautiful. Thank you. Yes, Nels just pointed something out that I will repeat, and that potato salad in the red bowl is his favorite. Nels has always made the potato salad. It's EJ's favorite, and when the last time that we had a big potato salad here, you'll see a white bucket in the corner in the kitchen. It was that full. Nels did it, and we ate it all. So enjoy your potato salad.
I think he did like potatoes. I think
Salad.